All right, good morning. So we're back to the Gemara on page Kuf Tes Vav on Aleph 115a. Count, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines from the top of the page. The last word, Amar. Amar Ravina. You have it there? Yeah. Okay. So I'm not exactly sure why, but at this point, the Gemara interjects its discussion of the order of the Seder, right? The Gemara went through the order of the Seder. I can guess why, but it's still kind of strange that the Gemara talks about it here. Right, the order of the Seder, if you go back to the beginning of the Masechta, the beginning of the Perek, began with Erev Pesach, making sure you have an appetite, making sure you set your table so it has a place to lean, making sure you have your 4 cups. And then I went to the first cup of Kiddush. And then I went to the dipping, which is what we just spoke about. And we talked about setting the Seder plate, which in times of the Gemara would have been at this juncture, right? They would have brought the table to you. So we talked about what's set. And now the Gemara, before it gets to the rest of the halachas of the actual dipping, because we haven't spoken about that yet. The Gemara hasn't told us what to dip into yet. The Gemara hasn't told us the fact that before you dip, you have to wash or chatz. The Gemara hasn't told us that yet. It's going to tell us soon, and it's going to tell us, the halachas of the brachas and all that. But the Gemara interjects at this point to tell us the halachas of koirach, the sandwich. I don't know why, because as you're going to see, it's going to make reference to a conversation that's going to come up soon when it does talk about the time when you're actually eating the matzah and maror and koirach. So I'm not sure exactly why it comes at the Gemara at this point. I imagine the reason is because you're setting your kaira and you're supposed to have vegetables ready for when you do maror. So maybe it's telling you now that there's going to be another maror for koirach. Maybe that's why it's coming up at this point, presumably. But let's see. So it's a freestanding 10 lines or so of the Gemara that describe why we have koirach, the sandwich. Yeah? Okay. Right, we all know we eat matzah, we eat maror, and then we eat them together. Right? We all know that already. Yeah. But that order is going to be derived from the lines we're about to read. That's where it came from. So it says like this. Amar Ravina, Ravina says, Amar li, Rav Mesharshia bereid Rav Nosson. I was told by Rav Mesharshia, son of Rabbi Nosson, that Hachi Amar Hillel, this is what Hillel said, Mishmei the Gemara, in the name of the Gemara. I hope you're aware that Hillel lived well before the Gemara. Right. Right? The word Gemara means tradition. Or actually, more accurately, derivation. So,
is it ever used in that context?
Right here.
All right.
Mishmei the Gemara, the name of derivation, the name of like tradition derivations he received from earlier.
Who even called it the Gemara? Was it like known that it was the Gemara when you were writing?
I imagine it came organically.
Right.
Like here's our Mishnah and here's our derivations.
Right.
Here's our addeds. Here's our discussions.
Mishnah says the word Mishnah, but like
right. Well, what does the word Mishnah mean? Mishnah means like a second. No. Oh, to teach. Yeah, showing that to teach. Right. Right. Shana means to teach. Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, so Masharshia tells us. Good morning, Alan. Masharshia tells us that this is what he heard from Hillel in the name of this tradition of derivation. Namely, it's going to be the opposite of what you expect. A person should not wrap together, not. Koirach means to wrap or to fold. Don't fold together. Inish, a person, matzah maror b'hadiyadadi. Do not mix your matzah and maror together. Don't do that. Isn't that the opposite of what we do? Yeah. We all eat the matzah and maror together because of Hillel. And you hear Hillel saying, don't mix it together. Okay, we'll get there. Let's wait. Hillel says, don't mix your matzah and maror together. Then nechol and eat it together. Don't do that. Why shouldn't you do that? Mishum, because we are of the view, or Hillel is of the view, that matzah bisman hazeh, matzah nowadays, daraisa is a biblical mitzvah. In post-temple times, eating matzah is a biblical commandment. The Gemara, in a few pages, is going to explain why. In a few pages, when the Gemara, right, because we're still holding by karpas, by dipping. When the Gemara gets to Moitzi Matzah, it's going to tell us why matzah is biblical. But essentially, the reason is because the Torah tells us to eat matzah independent of anything else. But maror, the eating of maror today, the Rabbanan is only rabbinic. Why is it only rabbinic? As we're going to learn later in Daf Kuf Chaf, we're going to learn in a few pages from now. Because when the Torah tells us to eat maror, it only tells us to eat maror together with the Pesach. And therefore, without the Pesach, at least biblically speaking, there is no Maror.
Not allowed.
Hmm?
You're not allowed to eat it.
Not allowed to eat what?
I mean, after Pesach, Maror is no use.
So again, we're talking about the carbon Pesach. So in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, the Torah says to eat the Maror together with the carbon Pesach. So today we have no carbon Pesach, so the Maror is only rabbinic.
Right.
But the Torah tells us to eat matzah independent of the matzah, the Pesach. It does tell us to eat it with the Pesach offering, but it also tells us to independently eat matzah that night. So the matzah remains biblical, but the Maror is rabbinic today. Only Rabbanan. Okay, so now therefore says Hillel, don't eat your matzah and Maror together. Why? Because if you do,
There's two ideas.
Asi Maror, you're gonna 1 second, you'll hear. You'll bring the Maror, Asi Maror, the Maror is gonna come, the Rabbanan, which is rabbinic, Umavatale, and is going to subdue la matzah, the taste and the flavor of the matzah, the rice, which is biblical.
Okay.
So you have a higher standing mitzvah, matzah, a lower standing mitzvah, the rabbanon, which is maror. And if you eat it together, the maror flavor, which is bitter, is a sharp flavor, and it's going to overpower the flavor of the matzah. And that's inappropriate to take a rabbinic mitzvah and make it overpower the flavor of a biblical mitzvah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he continues. Even according to the opinion which says that mitzvahs don't cancel each other out. You eat two mitzvahs together, they don't cancel each other out. There is that opinion. That's the case, no problem. Eat your matzah and maror together. But nonetheless, says Rabbi Masharshi in the name of Hillel, following?
I just lost the place.
Here. Where did it go? Here, oh, that's why. Here, Azuhani Mili.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So says again. So what did Masharshi say? Don't eat your matzah and maror together because your maror, which is a rabbinic flavor, is going to overpower the matzah flavor. That's inappropriate. Okay. Now, even though there's an opinion which says mitzvahs do not cancel each other out, Hani Mili, when is this true? Daraisa b'daraisa. When you have two biblical mitzvahs that are equal in status, then you can eat them together and they won't cancel each other out.
Right.
For example, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, eat the Pesach, eat the matzah, eat the maror all together. They're all biblical and they don't cancel each other out. Or the Rabbanon. If you're going to have two rabbinic mitzvahs, then they don't cancel each other out. In other words, if you have two mitzvahs of equal standing, you can eat them together, no problem. But if you have a biblical mitzvah and a rabbinic mitzvah, like in our case, in the post-temple time, matzah, biblical, maror, rabbinic, asi d'Rabbanon. The rabbinic mitzvah, the maror, is going to come, and it's going to overpower the biblical flavor, and that is not appropriate. End quote of what Rabbi Masharshi told us in the name of Hillel. So if we stopped here, what would we know about Hillel? In the times of the temple, you want to eat all of them together, go ahead. Do you have to? Not necessarily. At this point, we're going to learn more. But at this point, we would say, in the biblical time, in the temple time, when matzah, maror, and Pesach offering are all daidaisa, are all biblical, you want to eat them together, no problem. Today, post-temple, you may not eat them together. You have to eat the matzah and the maror separately. That's what we're learning so far. Yeah? There's more. Right? When we go through this, and then especially when we look at the Alter Shulchan Aruch, he's going to make it so organized that a lot of the way I'm framing it now comes from the way the Alter organized it for us, organized the shittas. We're going to see beautifully what the point of maror is really. What's really the point of maror? Of korach.
Correct.
And it's different than what we think. There's an important detail that's often overlooked in the maror. And when we learn this Gemara, we're not Shulchan Aruch, we have a very new appreciation. And especially when we see the Rebbe's Haggadah on korach, we're going to see a whole new appreciation for korach. I'm thinking actually that when we do our series on the Haggadah, we do one class focused on the in-depth of korach.
Oh.
It's going to be built on this Gemara and Alter Rebbe and the Rebbe's Haggadah. Okay, so let's see. Let's go further. Okay, so that's where we are so far. If you're in biblical time, because all three mitzvahs, the Pesach, the Matzah, the Maror are all biblical, eat them together, no problem. Post-temple time, the Matzah is biblical, the Maror is rabbinic, don't eat them together. Yeah? That's what we have so far.
Yeah.
Says the Gemara. Mantana Deshamisle.
If you can exchange, that to be
Yeah.
Rabbanan, the rest of the rest.
That's right. Otherwise, it's not nice. You're taking a rabbinic flavor and making it overpower the biblical flavor. Not nice. Okay. So now the Gemara says this. all of it sound logic, right?
Yeah, okay. Follow.
So Tana, who is the sage, the Shamisle, that teaches us, mitzvahs ein bevatle zuazu. Mitzvahs do not cancel each other out. Meaning when they're both biblical, right? Who says that? Well, we should know. Hillel, it's Hillel. Because Hillel only told us not to mix the matzah and maror when? After the temple is destroyed, when matzah is biblical and maror is rabbinic. Then we say the maror rabbinic cancels the matzah biblical. But if they were both biblical, no canceling. Right. So Hillel's of that view, right? Hilleli. Tanya, for we learned, Amru Allah al Hillel. They said about Hillel, Shaya Karchan Bevasachas, that he actually would eat, because Hillel lived in times of the temple.
Right.
Remember?
Yeah.
He lived in the times of the temple, which means, if you think about this, Rav Mashash is telling us a law from Hillel, not to mix the matzah and maror when the temple is destroyed. That means Hillel is in temple times telling his students, if one day the temple is destroyed, don't do what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, Nevuah.
Well, I don't know about Nevuah, but they knew they were under Roman occupation. They're not idiots.
And it's possible that
it's more chacham adav minavi. There's an expression which is the wise person is better than the prophet. Because the prophet only knows what Hashem tells him. The wise person can see and understand. So they were smart enough to know. But when we did this, Hillel in temple times, right? He would eat them all together because mitzvahs ein mevatle zuazu. Because they're biblical. He's in the temple time. They're biblical. So matzah is biblical, maror is biblical, and Pesach is biblical. He eats them all together, no problem. And he tells his students, hey, if one day the temple is ever destroyed, do not do what I'm doing. Because the maror is going to cancel out the matzah.
Right.
That's what's happening. Right? So let's see. The Tanya, we learned, Amru Allah al Hillel, they said about Hillel, he would wrap all together the Pesach offering, the Pesach korban, the matzah and the maror all together, and eat them. This we know because we say this in our Seder. Shenemar, as the verse reads, you should eat the Pesach offering on the matzah and maror. Okay? So Hillel would actually eat them all together. So what do we get now? In temple times, not only you could have the matzah and maror together with the Pesach offering, because they don't cancel each other out, you actually should. But in post-temple times, do not mix them together. That's what we're learning. You follow?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what about?
So why are we doing it?
What about the korban?
We'll get there. So
did he say the same about the korban?
He put the korban together with the matzah and maror. Because this pasuk which says matzah you should eat it with the matzah and maror. What's the it? The korban pesach.
Right.
So eat it, the korban pesach, together with your matzah and maror.
Right.
So this is what we're learning. Hillel is saying in temple times when I'm living, you not only you could eat your matzah, maror, and pesach together, you should.
Right.
But once the temple is destroyed, don't do what I'm doing. Which is ironic because we do it because he did it. Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you see the background where we're getting here.
Yeah.
Okay. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Hillel's friends disagreed with Hillel. Which means in temple times, there were two different programs. There was Hillel's program, eat your matzah, maror, Pesach together. And the friends, the other opinions, which seems like it's the majority actually, who said, no, eat Pesach, eat matzah, and then eat your maror. Even in temple times. Tanya, could we learn, says Rabbi Yochanan, you might think you're supposed to mix them all together. Eat them. The way Hillel used to do it. You might think that, but that's wrong, say the sages. Talmud Laimar comes the verses and says the same exact verse Hillel quotes. Eat them on matzah and maror. So how did Hillel understand it? Hillel said, eat it with matzah and maror, eat them all together.
Right.
What do the sages say? Nope. If they were supposed to be eaten all together, it would say, yoichlu oisoi, eat it. It doesn't say them. It says yoichlu hu, eat them. In the plural, eat them all separately. So the same exact pasuk, Hillel says, oh, that means eat them all together.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about the laws of Pesach, you're introducing matzah and maror. Yoichlu, eat them. Eat them with your matzah, with your Pesach offering. Right. Okay, all together. The sages say, not eat it, eat them separately.
You have an understanding of the yochlu.
Exactly. Is it them in the plural,
right,
highlighting separation, or is it them all together with the Pesach,
right,
as Hillel?
Right.
Okay. Now here's a key word. And therefore the sages continue, the people who disagree with Hillel, even if you want to have this one separate from that one. What does the word even mean?
Right.
You can do it both ways.
Right.
You could eat it together, but you don't have to. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan said no to dispute. You can't eat them together. If so, why does he say afilu? Why are you saying afilu? Why even? Right? Follow the question?
Mm-hmm.
So Maska for Ravashi praised a challenge to Rabbi Yochanan. If the sages disagree with Hillel and say you're not allowed to mix them together, maya afilu, why are they saying even?
Right.
They should say you shouldn't.
Right.
Hello, Ravashi. Therefore, Ravashi says no. Rabbi Yochanan got it wrong. Hi Tana, that sage which argues with Hillel, Hakikatana. This is what he means to say. You might think you don't fulfill your obligation unless you put them together and eat them. Like Hillel did it. Talmud Pesachim says the pasuk, eat them with matzah and maror, them separately. Even if you want to eat them separately, you may.
So
okay, so what do we have? We have like this. We have Hillel. Hillel's view is clear. Temple times, put them all together. You should. Post-temple times, don't you dare, because the Maror is going to cancel out the matzah. Okay.
Right.
The people who are not Hillel, the other people, two different ways of understanding them. Rabbi Yochanan says that the others actually said, never mix your matzah and Maror together. Not in temple times, not in post-temple times. The other opinion, Rav Ashi says, no. The people who argue with Hillel weren't saying that you're not allowed to mix them together, just saying you don't have to. This is what we have so far. Okay?
Yeah, I'm probably getting the wrong understanding, but it seems like one of them is saying like lechatchila and b'diavad. Like you should eat everything.
Yeah, that's right. So Rav Ashi is that's correct. That's correct. So Rabbi Yochanan is learning that every day. Rabbi Yochanan is learning. You're right. Rabbi Yochanan is learning. Even b'diavad, you can't have them together.
Right.
According to the opinions you disagree with Hillel. Rav Ashi is saying no. Whatever, if you want to.
Right.
Which means which one's a priority? Doesn't really say, actually. You might think you don't fulfill your obligation unless you put them together. Talmud Pesachim, even if you don't have them together.
Right. So,
maybe that means you should put them together, actually.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Even comes after.
Yes, you're correct.
You're supposed to do it this way, but if you don't,
it's also okay.
It's also okay.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Okay, very good. Now, at this point, is there any reason for us to put our matzah and maror together? We're post-temple times. The only person who insists that in temple times the only person who insists you have to put them together is Hillel, and he says so only in temple times. In post-temple times, he says don't.
Right.
Yeah. So is there any reason to put them together right now? No, that seems, and yet we're doing it, right? Follow?
Well, there's like we said, the other opinion.
Which other opinion?
The other sages.
The other sages. First of all, they said even in temple times you don't have to put them together.
Okay.
But now in post-temple times, when it's not biblical, maybe they'll agree that the maror counts as the flavor of the matzah.
Uh-huh.
They didn't comment on that.
Right.
So we have no positive reason to put them together right now. So what's going on? It almost seems like this whole kodach is like, it's not the real deal anyway. Yeah?
Right.
Okay, so now the Gemara continue. Let's see the Gemara now. So Hashda now, we haven't been established whether the halacha follows Hillel or Rabbanan. This is the Gemara's commentary post all this discussion. What does the Gemara mean? Is the halacha not established like Hillel or Rabbanan? What this means is we don't know. This is the way Rashbam explains it. We have two understandings of the sages. One understanding of the sages, which is Rav Ashi, like you said, that they agree with Hillel that sandwich is good, maybe even is better. Then we have a Yochanan who says, no, the sages say you're not allowed to put the sandwich together. So we don't know, is sandwich good or no good? So what should you do? Says the Gemara, Mavarach alachilas matzah. Make the bracha on the matzah. V'achol, and eat it. That's biblical nowadays. V'hadar afterwards, Mavarach alachilas maror. Make the bracha to eat maror. V'achol, and eat it. That's rabbinic. V'hadar, and afterwards, achol matzah v'chasa b'hadi adada, eat the matzah and maror together. Chasa is lettuce.
Yeah.
So what we do. B'loy bracha, without a bracha. Why no bracha? Because why should you make a bracha? Which bracha should you make? You already made the bracha on the mitzvah maror, rabbinic. You already made the mitzvah bracha on the matzah, biblical. Now you're eating them together. Why should you make a bracha?
Bracha yecholu.
It's not a bracha. The yechlu is only with the carbon Pesach. You have no carbon Pesach.
Okay.
Right?
Right. Okay.
So why do you do it? To remember the way it was done in this mikdash time, like Hillel. Because Hillel used to eat it together, because he says you have to, and maybe even according to Rav Ashi, the other sages would have done it too. So to remember the way it was done then, eat it together. But Be'etzem, at least the Alter Rebbe changes this a little bit. But the way you would think right now, that's the whole point of the sandwich.
That is a zeicher.
It's a zeicher. We're going to see, God willing, tomorrow we learn the Alter Rebbe, mind blowing, because there's all kinds of opinions of how to understand this Gemara. There's like this endless opinions, and again, maybe when we do our shir on at Pesach, going through that, Rebbe's like, oh, then maybe we'll unpack these opinions more. There's all kinds of opinions about how to understand this Gemara. I'll give you the Rashbam's track. But we're going to see from the Alter Rebbe, the way he summarizes the opinions, that actually the eating of the sandwich is not just to remember what Hillel did, but actually, because of the way Hillel did it, we have to do it nowadays in order to fulfill Maror properly.
Right.
Not because of in order to fulfill Maror properly. Why? Think about this. Matzah, the Torah says independent of anything.
Right. The Raisa.
The Raisa. Because it's independent of the Pesach offering.
Right.
But when does the Torah say to eat Maror? In what context?
With the carbon Pesach.
With the carbon Pesach. Which means without the carbon Pesach, slash matzah, you're not really doing it.
Right.
But what's the problem? Nowadays, you can't eat the maror together with matzah because then you ruin the matzah. So how do you get that? So you have to first eat the maror independently, but then eat the maror with the matzah because that's the only way to do it, to do the matzah, to do the maror properly. Because the maror was only eaten back then with the Pesach and the matzah. So in order to fulfill the mitzvah maror properly, you have to have a koirach. We'll see that in Alter Rebbe. You follow that logic?
No, because didn't you say there's supposed to be chasa?
Chasa is maror.
But that's in,
Chasa means maror. Chasa is lettuce. It's one of the maror.
So lettuce is the maror.
Yeah, the Gemara doesn't tell us it's 5 species. There's 5 species you can use for maror. One of them is chasa.
Okay, sorry.
Right, which is romaine lettuce.
Levi,
yeah.
Why do we have to say a bracha on the maror if it reminds us of bitter times?
Well, it reminds us.
You're blessing something that's bitter.
I understand the question.
A blessing is usually for something that's good. It's like a prayer.
Good question. The bracha is for a mitzvah, and because the Torah says to eat it, we make a bracha.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the happen, which is a funny thing, which means we have to have joy of fulfilling a mitzvah in remembering the bitter times. What an idea! And that's actually a very powerful idea. That even when a person thinks back at the things that were difficult, he still has to have the hindsight of saying, "This is the way Hashem wants it to be," and you have that joy. Right. So there's a lesson in that you're joyous and that you're fulfilling a mitzvah to remember bitter times. Right. Okay. So let's recap and see where we're going in Alter Rebbe Nara. Huh?
Like breaking the glass.
Like breaking the glass. Yeah. So let's remember. Let's recap where we are. In Beis Hamikdash times, you have 3 different opinions of how you should eat the matzah maror Pesach offering. Hillel, you have to eat them all 3 together. Opinion A in the sages. Well, you could eat them together. Maybe that's better, but you don't have to. Rav Ashi's opinion in the sages. Opinion 3, which is 2 of the sages, or Yochanan's version of the sages. No, you can't eat them together. You have to eat them separately. Okay. Post-temple times. What do we have so far? You have to eat them separately because the rabbinic maror is going to ruin your matzah flavor. So therefore, you have to eat the matzah first and then the maror first. But then the Gemara throws in this other thing. Still, once you're done eating the maror and the matzah separately to fulfill your biblical and rabbinic obligations, eat them together to remember how Hillel did it. Right?
Yeah.
But we're going to learn now, as we're about to say tomorrow, that the eating it together today, like Hillel, is actually the best way to fulfill the maror mitzvah. Because maror in the Torah is only said in the context of eating it with Pesach and matzah. And therefore, if the sages say eat maror today as a rabbinic mitzvah because they used to have a biblical matzah mitzvah of maror, then your rabbinic mitzvah today also has to be with matzah because that's the way it was biblically. So in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Maror properly, you have to eat koirach. Not just remember Hillel. So we'll see that in the Shulchan Aruch God willing tomorrow. Follow where we're going?
But is he saying three things? So he's saying like first eat matzah, then eat maror, and then eat the three of them, or the two of them. Right?
And you're talking about biblical terms or now?
Now.
Yeah. The Gemara says straight up.
Right.
But why are you eating that third? The Gemara just says to remember the way Hillel used to do it.
Right.
Alter was going to explain that in this remembrance, the way Hillel used to do it is the proper way to fulfill the mitzvah of Maror, the rabbinic mitzvah of Maror is incomplete unless you have koirach.
Wow.
Right? Because the biblical mitzvah of Maror is the only one that's mixed together.
Right.
And therefore the rabbinic mitzvah is also the only one that's mixed together.
Right.
And therefore, first of all, you have to eat the Maror separately, not to ruin your matzah flavor. Right. But then you also have to eat the Maror with the matzah to fulfill the mitzvah of Maror properly. So the koirach ends up being partially part of the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Maror.
Right. The
sandwich, koirach, that's the new appreciation we're getting. Right. Till we learned this Gemara, we thought, okay, it's a nice, beautiful thing to remember what it used to be. But the real mitzvahs are already done.
Right.
And now we're learning,
No, right.
The mitzvah of Maror is incomplete until you've done your koirach. Which is why you shouldn't speak till after you've done koirach, because one mitzvah, eating maror and then eating the sandwich is really one mitzvah of the fulfillment of maror. Right. But first you have to eat the maror separately, not to ruin your matzah flavor, and then you have to eat the maror with the matzah to fulfill the way it's supposed to be done, right. Which is to be eaten with matzah, with Pesach and matzah, right. Which today we only have matzah.
And the koirach is really the ikr of maror.
According to Hillel, the ikr of maror is actually in koirach, not in the actual. Because according to Hillel, that's the only way to eat the maror. Right. There you go. So the koirach is getting a much more halachic foothold, not just to remember the way Hillel used to do it. Because that's the way Hillel used to do it, that's the only way to eat the maror is. This is what we're going to get to tomorrow after Shulchan Aruch, and we'll see it become even more clear as we get to the Rebbe's Haggadah. Punkt.
Yeah.
Okay, so beautiful.
Okay.
A wonderful day, Eden.
Thank you. You too.
You find my phone?
Yeah, I have it. I'll
good. Okay.
It'll be on my desk.
Good. Super.
Good day.
I'll try to be there for mincha.
Okay.
I'll try.
Good day.